Hi, and welcome back to our series on Leading with Impact. I'm your host, Samantha Brighton. Today, I'm joined by justice advocate, communicator, peacemaker, and author Danielle Strickland. Danielle is passionate about serving others and has created global initiatives that are serving at-risk populations, such as anti-trafficking, as well as Women Speaker Bootcamp. Thanks so much for joining us today, Danielle.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.
As a speaker who has traveled the world, you have noticed that there's a lack of women speakers. This is also something that we've tried to improve for our series. So we want to know about your boot camp that elevates female speakers, and why do you feel it's a necessary subject to address?
Yeah, I think the evidence of the gap in female speakers in public spaces, especially in some demographics, is evidence that there's something wrong. I don't think it's evidence of bad or female communicators. I know tons of them. What would happen in conferences that I would be speaking at, I would be maybe the only one or one of a few. And I would say to the conference organizers, where are the other female speakers? And they would say to me, we don't know, or they would say, we asked somebody and they said no. So what I started to do was look into why there was such a gap there. Why did the male conference organizers not know of female communicators? And then also, why were the females they were asking not saying yes? And so I realized that there is this lack of training and lack of opportunity for a collective, for like a together approach to getting better together as communicators. So we started this women's boot camp, which is just a 2-day full on everything I know about communication with activations and exercises to get people through that initial, maybe I don't have what it takes. And the research really that I did for the book Better Together helped me understand this, that a woman's self-confidence right now, according to the research, the most confident a female will be is at age 9. And even like when I would talk to female communicators who feel like, I'm supposed to speak, and I would say, well, look, where's your website? Where's your video footage of the speak? Like, conference organizers not going to ask you to speak if they can't get a hold of you or see you speak somewhere. And then they would all say, oh no, I can't do that. That sounds like I'm too full of myself, or I think too highly of myself, or all of these things. And I'd just be like, what's going on? And so the more research I did, the more I realized there really is a deficit when it comes to women feeling capable and confident and supported and strong. And anytime you're the only one or always the exception, there's a lot of baggage that comes with that. So part of what we tried to do was training, getting people through that confidence barrier, but also collective support. We're in this together. You're not the only one. There's many, many of us, and we can do this together.
So you mentioned your book. What pieces of advice and what tidbits from your research can you share about addressing the topics of racism, sexism, and working together to remove prejudice from our workplaces and from our world?
I think, first of all, it's not enough just to wish for change to happen. There actually has to be acknowledgement of where the problems are. I would say this too, in the season in which we're in, disruption through the lens of fear is a threat, but disruption through the lens of faith is an invitation or an opportunity. There's an invitation that we can all partner with making things better. So I think that the disruption of this moment lends itself to this opportunity and this invitation. Leaders say it like this: never waste a crisis. So if we're already in crisis, let's use the crisis for the benefit of shaping our companies or our policies or our systems or our structures to benefit all people and to change. A couple key things. I think you don't change through tokenism or even just being politically correct, but actually we need to go a bit deeper than that. And one of the best rules of thumb in businesses and even countries, governments who have tried to make equity, which is not just equality, which is the right, but it's equity, which is the opportunity to use the rights. Every country, like for example, Rwanda is a shining hill. When they rebuilt their government after the genocide, they determined that they were going to have women involved in the government. And that was the first time in Rwanda. I mean, it was like a big deal, but the president at the time was like, we've got to do things a different way. This didn't work. So what they did to balance the equity in their government is they created a 30% quota. So they said, we're aiming for 30% female representation in our government. And that quota has been cited in all the research in equity as being the thing to aim for, because if you have less than 30%, you end up not changing a culture. You just end up having an exception to the culture. So Rwanda found this. Not only did they change the political culture, but they changed the entire country. And now there's 60% there that they have the highest female representation in any political system in the world right now. Because what they found is as they involved women in politics, the country just got better and better and better. Like they just were surprised at what a big, huge difference it made to have women involved. Now, I don't think this is about, females being better than men. This is not women against men. I refuse to believe in those polemities. I think that this is about how do we create a new way, because the world desperately needs to see what that looks like. I just think untapping the resources and potential that women have to contribute to the betterment of the world is going to benefit everybody. I think there's two big things that can be helpful just sort of as frameworks for working with anyone who's different from yourself. The first thing is to recognize that difference is not a threat, that difference is invitation. And to realize, I think whenever we overemphasize one difference above every other difference, it distorts differences. So this happens a lot with gender. I mean, it's different, but it's only one difference. So there are some rooms that I go in and I have way more in common with the men in that room than the women in that room. I think this generation's infatuation with the Enneagram is a fantastic way of grouping people differently around personalities or the way that we're built to work versus these gender boxes. And then the other big principle that I think we can all figure out how to do, once we accept difference as something positive that's going to make us more instead of be a competing influence, it's going to be actually a contributing influence. It leads us to a big principle which is helpful to leaders called mutuality, which means that we're in this thing together. So mutuality, which is this, Nelson Mandela is famous for this. His picture's right up above my head here. Mutuality was the philosophy of Ubuntu, that African tribal word that he used in his work in South Africa to say that this tribal understanding that we're all in this together. So if you fail, I fail. And if I succeed, you succeed. That there's no way of of disconnecting our humanity because we're in this thing together. It's a beautifully evolved understanding of how the interconnectedness of our humanity. So difference is this invitation to become more, and mutuality is this place where as we thrive together, we all get better together. That's sort of two big principles that should be guiding all of our decisions as leaders.
So for someone exploring their own leadership journey, especially some of the women that maybe don't have the confidence, what advice do you have to get them in front of an audience and empower them to take the next steps?
Yeah, I think, I've got 2 full days of advice, but here's a couple of just nuggets that might help you. One is to really find your own voice. And this requires you to do some work yourself. So oftentimes when you begin speaking, you're sort of emulating, you're copying somebody, you're imitating somebody that you really like. That's not bad. That's a good beginning. That's how every skill is learned. What I would suggest is that you find people that you really like their communication style that resonates with you. Most of the really great communicators that I know are furious curious. They're reading an eclectic amount of things. They're discovering, they see everything around them with different kind of eyes. So I would say find your own voice and get furiously curious. Be curious about how things work so that when you're actually sharing and you're teaching or you're speaking, you're not speaking out of some sort of duty or obligation, or you're not trying to prove something to the world. You're just sharing. You're sharing what it is that is exciting for you right now. And that's kind of an infectious way to share. If you think about the ways that you learn. So find your own voice. Do that work. Who are you? How do you learn? What's your style? And then what I would say is stick to your style. What works for you is going to be the most authentic way that you're going to speak. And then the only way to get this thing done is to practice. Do it. Just stand in your room and practice with your mirror. I often say to people, if you are going to be doing oral presentations, in other words, if you're going to be speaking, practice speaking. And I know that's crazy. People are always that's crazy. I got to write it out to collect my thoughts. I would just say at the most, write out an outline and then practice speaking it out loud. That is the communication expertise that you want to have if you're going to communicate with your voice. Use your voice even from the very beginning. The last piece of advice I would give is just to always say yes if ever you can. Unless there's like a clear way that you can't, I would say yes to every opportunity you have to speak. Don't feel ripped off if you're beginning at this and you're not like knocking it out of the park or invited to speak to 100 or hundreds of people. Like, just take every opportunity that you have and consider that every opportunity that you have to communicate is a way of getting better and a way of learning and a way of not only learning how to present, but also who you are and how you sound and how you prepare and what you need to do to care for yourself in the midst of that. So I say as many opportunities as you can take them.
That's really fantastic advice, Danielle. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today and speaking with our audience. I really think you have some great nuggets of wisdom, as well as I encourage other people to continue to look into your resources and programs to help others. For everyone watching today, I have a question for you. What are you fiercely curious about? We really want to know, so please engage with us on social media. If you liked today's video, please follow our Facebook and Instagram pages, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified about everything Leader Impact. Thanks so much for joining us, and see you next time.